Hello, Hum 1020 students. This is Professor Miller checking in. I graded your Roman values paragraphs yesterday, and I noticed many of you were making a lot of the same mistakes in terms of MLA citations. So I know that I have been providing feedback and additional support over the course of our time together so far, but I'm not seeing a lot of implementation of that feedback. So I'm wondering if maybe we just need some additional support understanding some of these concepts. And I want to incentivize you to actually watch the video in its entirety. So if you do watch the video, there will eventually be an Easter egg with an extra credit opportunity, and I'm going to be adding that extra credit right to that Roman values paragraph score. So I know many of you, could use a little extra credit on that particular grade. So I hope you will watch to the end. So what are we going to talk about in this video? First of all, I'm going to talk to you about some of the reasons why we cite in the first place. I think oftentimes that helps us be better at a task when we know what the reason behind it is. I'm also going to talk to you a bit about general formatting, including that MLA header and heading. Again, I know I've provided a lot of feedback, but I'm still seeing the same mistakes again and again in your submission. So we're going to go ahead and walk through that to make sure that that header and heading is on target. We're also going to talk about in-text citations. The great majority of the submissions that I got for the Roman values paragraphs, there wasn't any in-text citations. So I'm going to explain to you what those are and again, why we include them. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the works cited. That's going to be the sources, the listing of the sources that we use that goes at the end of our submissions. All right, so let's start by talking about why we cite in the first place. There are actually many reasons, but I'm going to talk to you about just a few. One of them is that when we create work in the academic setting, we are actually joining the academic community. We are participating in the conversation alongside other scholars, other experts in the field. So we want to hold ourselves to a very high standard in terms of accountability, and to make sure that the information that we are creating, that we're generating, that we're putting out into the world is both accurate, and that the sources that we use for that work are scholarly. Okay, that's one reason. Another reason actually pertains to legal and ethical concerns. Okay, I know a lot of you were raised in the information age, so this could be kind of a tough concept to grasp. So for instance, let's say that we are all in a face-to-face class and someone comes by and they take my mug off of my desk, right? This mug is tangible, it's physical. You know that it is my personal property. Right? Sometimes that's not as clear when we are perusing the internet. A lot of times we will copy and paste an image, or we will copy and paste someone's text, but in most cases that is going to be copyrighted information, and there is a creator of that information or that image or whatever it is, and that's their intellectual property. So whenever possible, we want to give credit to that author or that artist with citation. Okay, you actually, I mean, it's kind of an extreme example, and because we are in the academic setting, we have fair use, but you still could get sued. I mean, some people do get sued because they do not provide appropriate attribution. It might help to kind of put yourself in the author's shoes. Let's say you write a really terrific book on a topic that you're enthusiastic about. You put the book on the internet, and then people just start copying and pasting it without any attribution to you, right? You want to get credit for your intellectual property. So kind of try to keep that in mind as you are utilizing various resources in this course and others. All right, the last concern is showing your work. And this has become particularly important in the last few years because we have so much AI usage. Now, if you used AI for the Roman values paragraph, I actually know. And there are a lot of hallmarks to essays that are generated on AI. So I am aware when you are using AI, I want to strongly discourage you from relying so heavily on AI. If you just kind of took the copied and pasted that prompt into AI, you probably submitted the exact same essay as other students in the class. So for instance, a combination I saw a lot of was the Augustus of Pumaforta and Black Panther. Okay, so they use that for their Roman artifact and then their modern artifact, right? There's nothing wrong with choosing either of those artifacts, but there, of course, that's not original work, and we want to be relying on our own powers of analysis because that is actually one of the primary skills we build in this course is by understanding a culture, by taking one of its artifacts, examining it, analyzing it, and seeing what it tells us about that particular culture. So if you just plug that into AI, let AI select those artifacts for you and do your analysis for you, you probably didn't get the greatest of grades. And also you didn't have the correct attribution, you did not have the correct citation because it was actually AI that did the work for you and it did not show its work. So this is going to be very important moving forward. Make sure you're showing your work. Make sure you're actually conducting the research. Make sure you're actually going to the artifact. You should not be relying just on AI's description of an artifact. You should look at it with your own eyes and kind of evaluate it for yourself. So that's something that's going to be very important, that I am going to be a bit more stringent just because it does seem like this is an area that we need more work on. So make sure you're showing your work both in your discussion boards and in your written submissions. All right, so let's start with some of that general formatting, the MLA formatting, including the header and heading. I know sometimes these terms are used interchangeably, but when we're talking about MLA format, they actually cannot be used interchangeably. They actually refer to very specific parts of the MLA paper, and I'm going to talk to you more about that. Okay, so the header is actually going to be at the top of your document. It's going to be on the upper, I have to reverse it in my mind, the upper right hand corner of your paper. That's where your last name and page number is going to go. Okay, and there's a very specific way to do this, and I've been including the step-by-step directions in my feedback to many of you, but it still seems like we need some support. Maybe it will help to actually see where we find these various things in Microsoft Word. So in order to insert the header, we're actually going to start with that insert tab. So you're going to go to the banner, you see where you got file and you got home, and then you're going to click on insert. On that insert tab, we're going to look at the ribbon and we're going to find page number. You can see page number has that little arrow down, which is going to give us a drop box. You're going to see top of page. We're going to click on that top of page. And then from there, you're going to get another one of those little drop boxes and you're going to click plain number 3. And Microsoft Word is going to actually automatically number all my pages for me. So right now I just have one page, so it's labeled 1, but if I added 9 more pages, it would add those page numbers sequentially for me. However, it's not going to add my last name to the header. So that's going to be up to me. My last name is Miller, of course, so I add my last name beside that page number. Then you can see that I left only one space between my last name and the page number, because that's all the space I need. I also highlight the entire header and change it to Times New Roman, because Times New Roman is actually the go-to font for academic writing. You might encounter professors who will request different fonts. In that case, you should follow what their expectation is, but for the most part, Times New Roman is going to be the font that you are using in academic writing. It's professional, it's polished, and it's just kind of the gold standard. So once I have my last name in there, you can see that I'm actually editing the header. So I'm going to click outside that header so that I can add my heading. So this is the information that goes in the heading. It'll be the student's name. In this case, this is a mock paper. It's me. I am the student. And then I add my professor's name. Professor Hill's actually a colleague, so I used her name. If you know Professor Hill, you know that she's a terrific professor. So she was the first one that popped into my head, so I used her name. Then the course title, Hum 1020, and then the date. The date, you will notice, is a little funky in how it is formatted. This is actually the military format. It goes date, then month, then year. So we're not using any forward slashes. We are not just using just numbers. We are not doing June 1, comma 2025. We are using this specific format for our dates. Why does MLA want it like that? I'm not sure, but that is the format that we're going to use pretty consistently for all of our dates, not just in the heading, but also in our works cited. Then beneath the heading, I have the centered title. I notice that I've used an original title instead of the title of the assignment. This is a good practice to get into now that you're in this Gateway course. In general, you don't use the title of the assignment. You give your documents a title that reflects, gives the reader some clues about what the content of your specific essay is about. Not expecting perfection on this, just do your best. Again, this is a good place to practice some of these skills. All right, in-text citations. This is actually where many of you lost points on the Roman values paragraph. You might have maybe included some URLs at the end of your document, maybe even a complete works cited, but there weren't any in-text citations indicating where in the essay those works were used. So in-text citations are exactly what they sound like. They are citations that are actually in the text, okay? There are two major ways that we show the reader where our sources are used. One is signal phrase and the other is end parenthetical citation. You do not have to know those terms. Just be aware that there are a couple different ways to approach in-text citations in MLA. I'm going to show you one of the more common ones. I use the textbook actually. If you look at the example here, this is the same example that I used in the orientation module. According to Gloria K. Fierro, who is the author of our textbook, it is likely that shared responsibility characterized humankind's earliest societies. And then notice there is a for at the end. Now in citation, the author is always, always, always the most important piece of information. Again, because that is their intellectual property and we want to give credit where credit is due. That's why I didn't say according to the textbook or according to the text, because, well, the textbook isn't a person. The textbook didn't write itself. Fierro wrote the book. Those are her ideas. Those are her words. So we want to give credit to her whenever possible. Now, there are situations where there isn't an author, and then it would be appropriate to say, according to the article, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, you want to use that author. Try not to be lazy in finding the author. Sometimes it's a little hidden depending on the formatting of a particular resource. It's not always going to be by so-and-so, beneath the title. So make sure you're looking for that. Sometimes it's at the bottom or something like that. So whenever possible, make sure you're crediting those authors for their for their intellectual property. Notice also there is a for at the end in parentheses. That is where I am indicating the page number. So that I found this quote on page 4 of my physical hard copy of Landmarks in Humanities. So that's why I include that for. Notice I don't have a P, I don't have page, I don't have anything like that because MLA does not call for any of those. It just wants the page number. Now you might be thinking, well, a lot of times there isn't a page number, and you're absolutely right. We use so much digital material so that we don't always have a page number. If that is the case, do not worry about it. You don't put anything at the end. I will probably be able to tell just by going to your works cited if you have a URL there that, oh, this is an electronic source, so there probably wasn't any page numbers. You may encounter certain professors in the future that require that you include a paragraph number in those instances. This is kind of a pain, so I do not require students to do that. I mean, sometimes documents are very long and I don't want you to be counting into the hundreds in order to give me a paragraph number, so do not worry about that. The other way that we cite within the document is using that end parenthetical citation. That might be a format that's a bit more familiar to you. There's an example down at the bottom. The tremendous number of female statues discovered in Neolithic graves, and then I start the quote. Indicates the shift from gathering to producing food. Mother Earth's significance increased. And then I have Fierro and 7. So I have both the author and the page number. If you look at both of the examples, notice they both have the author and the page number because that is the information that we want to provide within the text. Now, sometimes I think students think if they put the ideas into their own words that they do not have to cite the author. In some instances, that is correct. But so for instance, if I took that information in the first quote about the shared responsibility and I kind of wrote it in my own words, I would still need to credit Fierro and give that page number because we also provide citation for summary paraphrase. Okay. If you're not sure whether or not citation is in order, I recommend citing anyway. And the reason for that is you're very unlikely to get penalized at grading for oversighting, but you can definitely get dinged for underciting. Okay. All right. So once we have all those in-text citations in there, we want to create our works cited. All right, that brings us to the works cited. The works cited is going to be at the end of your document, and they actually get their own pages. So even if you only have like one sentence on the last page of your text, you're still going to skip down to the next available page because the works cited get their own pages. Notice that I keep referring to it as the works cited, and that's because that is very specific to MLA. Different formats have different names for the listing at the end of the document. For instance, maybe you are taking a class that requires APA right now, in which case this page would be labeled references, and references would be bolded, but that's not what we're doing here. MLA has its own rules. It is the works cited. Works cited is centered, and it's not bolded. From there, I start listing my works. The works do get ordered alphabetically by author. Of these 4 sources, the first one to come alphabetically is Dean, so that's why Dean starts out, and then thereafter each of the listings comes alphabetically. This particular works cited listing is for an article, electronic source, which is probably the most common scenario you are going to encounter in college. So notice the author is first. That's going to make things super simple. So if someone sees, Dean 4 as a citation in the in-text citations, in order to find out, well, who's Dean and what is this article about, all they have to do is go down to your works cited. They know that where to find it because that is going to be ordered alphabetically. They see Dean right off from the top and they're like, oh, okay, this is an article from the New York Times. And if I wanted to investigate the source, I could use that URL to visit it. Again, that's one of the ways we show our work. Okay. There are other scenarios. There's going to be other formats. Depending on the type of source, you're going to be using a different format. It's almost like filling out a form. You'll see a little bit more what I mean by that when you actually visit one of the guides. It is not your job to memorize these formats. That's not what we're doing at all. On the contrary, you're actually going to visit the guide each time probably. Maybe after a while you'll be able to kind of cite without the guide, but for the most part, you're going to want to consult the guide to make sure that your citation is accurate. And depending on the kind of source, so for instance, this is the electronic article format, you might also need to cite a YouTube video or print book, in which case you're going to need to find the format for those specific sources. And you're just going to go right to that guide. You can even, if you prefer, you can even Google how do I cite a YouTube video in MLA format, and you will get a return with an explanation of how to do that. You can also always reach out to me if something's not quite making sense. I'm always delighted to support you as you are mastering MLA format. All right, guys, so I think that is about it. There are many resources, again, in that orientation module on that page that addresses MLA formatting specifically. If you need any help with this, though, you can, many students will actually send me their written assignments before they submit for feedback on the MLA formatting, and I am delighted to do that. So there's absolutely no reason for you not to be successful in this. I will support you as best I can. If you would prefer not to talk to me, you will not hurt my feelings. We also have other resources available to us, like the Writing Center and online tutoring. All right, guys, have a terrific week. And if you saw that extra credit, make sure you email me so that I can get that added to your Roman values paragraph score.